In this episode, we turn to a topic that many new learners do not expect to matter so much until they realize that even the best security ideas go nowhere if the organization cannot explain why they deserve funding. A security budget is not just a spreadsheet full of numbers, and it is not simply a request to buy tools because the threat landscape looks scary. It is one of the clearest ways a security leader shows priorities, connects risk to business decisions, and proves that security is part of responsible management rather than an optional technical add-on. For someone studying the Certified Information Security Manager, CISM, this matters because leadership often depends less on knowing that a control would be helpful and more on being able to explain what problem it solves, what outcome it supports, and why the investment makes sense at the enterprise level. Building an effective budget means understanding business goals, security needs, operational limits, and the language executives use when they decide where money should go. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful place to start is by understanding what a security budget really represents. Many beginners think of a budget as a list of purchases, but a strong security budget is better understood as a financial expression of strategy. It shows what the organization is willing to invest in order to reduce meaningful risk, support resilience, protect important information, and maintain trust with customers, regulators, partners, and leadership. That means the budget is not only about tools or licenses. It also reflects decisions about people, training, outside expertise, recovery capability, governance, monitoring, and long-term program maturity. If the security strategy emphasizes identity discipline, incident readiness, third-party oversight, or resilience of critical services, the budget should reveal those priorities clearly. In that sense, the budget becomes a management statement. It tells the organization what security leadership believes matters most, and how that belief connects to the business. When the budget is weak or disconnected from strategy, security often becomes reactive, fragmented, and much harder to defend during difficult trade-off conversations. One of the most important lessons for beginners is that effective security budgeting starts with organizational goals rather than with product catalogs or fear of the latest threat. If the business is trying to expand digitally, improve customer trust, enter regulated markets, protect critical operations, or recover faster from disruption, those goals should shape where security money goes. A company focused on dependable service may need stronger investment in monitoring, backup confidence, and incident recovery, while a company expanding into cloud-based services may need more attention on access control, secure design, and third-party assurance. This is why security budgets should be aligned to the same business priorities discussed in strategic planning, not treated as a side conversation happening only inside the security function. When leaders see that security spending supports the organization's direction, the conversation becomes much more productive. Instead of arguing over whether security deserves funding in general, the organization starts weighing which investments most effectively support the goals it already said were important. A strong security budget also has to reflect the fact that security capability is built from several different kinds of spending, not from technology alone. People are often the largest and most important investment because organizations need skilled staff, clear ownership, leadership time, and ongoing development of knowledge if they want a durable program rather than a collection of disconnected tools. Processes matter too, because incident handling, vendor review, access management, governance, and recovery planning all depend on time, structure, and operational discipline that cost money even when no new product is purchased. Technology still matters, of course, but it should be understood as one part of a larger capability picture rather than the whole picture. External services may also play a major role, especially when organizations rely on outside expertise for assessments, response support, managed detection, compliance work, or specialized investigations. For a new learner, this broader view is important because weak budgets often happen when leaders think only in terms of buying things and fail to fund the people and processes needed to make those things useful. Another useful budgeting concept is the difference between starting costs and ongoing costs, because security investments rarely end at the moment of purchase. An organization may pay initially to acquire a platform, redesign a process, hire a specialist, or launch a new program. But the real financial commitment often continues through maintenance, training, tuning, renewals, support, staffing, and oversight. A tool that looks affordable in the first year may become expensive if it needs more analysts, more integration work, or more external support than anyone expected. A new policy or governance process may sound simple until leaders realize it requires review time, education, communication, and exception handling to function well. This matters because budgets become misleading when they focus only on the visible upfront cost and ignore what it takes to sustain the capability responsibly over time. For CISM learners, this is a key management point. Good budgeting is not about winning approval for the first payment. It is about understanding the full operational commitment the organization is making and deciding whether that commitment still supports real security value. Before a budget can be built effectively, the organization needs a clear view of what it is trying to protect and where its most meaningful exposures lie. That means budgeting should be informed by assets, services, data sensitivity, operational dependencies, regulatory obligations, past incidents, audit findings, and strategic plans. A business that depends on a few critical platforms may justify a different pattern of spending than one with a broad but less sensitive environment. A company that handles regulated personal information will likely need different controls and oversight than one whose main concern is uptime of industrial operations. Budgeting becomes stronger when it starts from that reality rather than from generic assumptions about what every mature security program should own. Beginners should notice that this is another example of risk-based thinking. The point is not to spend widely just to look serious about security. The point is to direct money toward the places where failure would most interfere with the organization's mission, trust, or legal standing, and where improvement would make the biggest difference. Prioritization is where many budgeting decisions become difficult because very few organizations can fund every useful idea at once. This is why an effective budget often reflects sequencing as much as selection. Some needs are urgent because they address a major control gap, a regulatory requirement, a recurring incident pattern, or a critical business dependency that leadership has already identified as unacceptable. Other needs are important, but may be better handled in a later phase once foundational weaknesses are addressed. For example, a company struggling with basic visibility, unclear ownership, and weak recovery capability may gain more from fixing those fundamentals first than from purchasing an advanced platform it is not yet ready to operate well. Good budgeting therefore requires discipline about readiness and timing, not just enthusiasm for improvement. For new learners, this is one of the clearest signs of security maturity. Strong leaders do not try to fund everything that sounds helpful. They build a path, understand what must come first, and use the budget to move the organization forward in a sequence it can realistically support. The conversation becomes much more effective when security leaders learn how to describe budget needs in business language rather than only in technical language. Executives usually do not decide funding based on how interesting a threat is or how advanced a control sounds. They decide based on operational risk, customer trust, legal exposure, resilience, business enablement, cost control, and confidence that the requested investment will solve a real problem. That means a request is usually stronger when it explains which business service is at risk, what disruption could occur, what data exposure might result, what recovery weakness exists, or what strategic initiative is being supported. A tool-centered pitch often sounds like security wants something because the security team likes it. A risk-centered pitch sounds like the organization needs a capability because an enterprise objective is exposed without it. For a CISM learner, this translation skill is central to leadership. Budgeting is rarely won by technical correctness alone. It is won by showing how the investment helps the organization avoid meaningful harm or achieve meaningful goals more safely. This is where return on investment, ROI, analysis enters the picture. Although beginners should understand that ROI in security is not always as simple as it looks in other business areas. In some parts of the organization, investment produces clear and visible revenue growth, cost savings, or output increases that can be measured directly. Security investments often work differently because their value frequently appears in the problems they prevent, the downtime they reduce, the losses they avoid, or the trust they preserve. That can make the analysis less straightforward, but it does not make it less important. ROI in security is really about helping leadership judge whether the money being requested creates value through risk reduction, resilience, confidence, operational support, or avoided loss. The analysis becomes more credible when it does not promise certainty it cannot prove. Instead, it should show why the investment is reasonable, what risk it addresses, what improvement it is expected to create, and how that improvement supports business outcomes the organization already cares about. One important way to think about security ROI is through avoided cost, even though avoided cost must be used carefully and honestly. If an organization improves access controls, backup confidence, incident response capability, or third-party oversight, it may reduce the likelihood or impact of incidents that could otherwise create expensive disruption, data exposure, legal consequences, customer loss, or recovery expense. That does not mean leaders should claim a precise dollar value with false confidence for every possible event. It means they should estimate thoughtfully where they can and explain reasonably where exact numbers are harder to prove. For example, reducing hours of outage in a revenue-generating service, lowering the chance of repeated fraud, shortening incident recovery time, or avoiding emergency consulting costs can all be part of the value picture. A beginner should see that security ROI is often strongest when it combines quantitative reasoning with operational context. The most persuasive case is usually not a dramatic number pulled from nowhere, but a grounded explanation of what kinds of cost, disruption, and exposure the investment is expected to reduce. Security investments also create value in ways that are harder to price directly, but still matter greatly to the business. Improved customer confidence, stronger regulatory posture, better audit outcomes, cleaner integration with partners, more stable operations, and greater executive visibility into risk can all support the organization's long-term success even when they are not easy to convert into exact financial figures. These benefits are sometimes called intangible, but they are not imaginary. A company that repeatedly struggles with trust, disruption, or weak oversight may pay for those weaknesses through lost customers, damaged reputation, strained partnerships, leadership distraction, and missed business opportunities. A good security budget should acknowledge these broader forms of value without pretending they can all be measured with perfect precision. For CISM learners, this is an important balance. Strong leaders do not hide behind vague language, but they also do not weaken their case by pretending that only directly measurable savings count. Security exists partly to preserve confidence and continuity, and those outcomes often matter more to the enterprise than a narrow accounting formula can fully capture. When exact financial return is difficult to calculate, leaders can still use a disciplined form of ROI analysis by comparing cost to risk reduction, capability improvement, and business impact. A proposal may not show direct revenue growth, but it can still be justified by showing that it closes a major control gap, reduces recovery time for a critical service, strengthens compliance in a sensitive area, or supports a strategic initiative the organization has already prioritized. The key is to avoid weak arguments such as security is important, therefore this must be funded. Instead, the case should show what specific weakness exists today, why that weakness matters to the business, how the proposed investment changes the condition, and why the change is worth the cost compared with other available uses of money. This is where security budgeting becomes both analytical and persuasive. For a beginner, the lesson is that ROI is not just a formula. It is a decision support tool that helps the organization weigh whether the expected improvement in protection, trust, resilience, or control is strong enough to justify the financial commitment being requested. Several common mistakes can weaken security budgets in ROI discussions, and understanding them helps show what effective practice looks like. One mistake is building the budget around fear, assuming that dramatic threat language will persuade leaders even when the request is not clearly tied to business priorities. Another is focusing too heavily on products while underfunding staffing, training, process maturity, and operating support needed to make those products useful. Some leaders also weaken their case by presenting unrealistic savings or claiming that a single investment will eliminate risk rather than reduce it to a more acceptable level. Others make the opposite mistake and offer only vague language about importance without showing what the money will actually improve. Strong budgeting avoids both extremes. It stays grounded, explains trade-offs honestly, and shows that security leadership understands the difference between aspiration and deliverable value. That kind of credibility matters because once leaders trust the quality of security budget reasoning, future requests often receive more serious attention. Measurement after funding is just as important as the case made before funding because organizations need to know whether the investment produced the capability or risk reduction that was promised. This does not mean every budget item must deliver a perfect numerical score, but it does mean leaders should track whether the funded initiative improved visibility, reduced incident frequency or impact, strengthened control consistency, shortened recovery time, improved audit confidence, or otherwise changed the organization's condition in a meaningful way. When measurement is ignored, budgeting becomes a cycle of requests without accountability. When measurement is done well, it supports learning, improves future ROI analysis, and helps leadership see which kinds of investments create the greatest value in the specific environment of the organization. For beginners, this closes the loop between budgeting and governance. Money is not allocated just to approve activity. It is allocated to improve outcomes. Effective security leaders remember that the budget is part of a larger process of planning, justification, delivery, and review. As you step back from the whole topic, the central lesson is that building effective security budgets and ROI analysis is really about connecting security ambition to business judgment. A strong budget reflects strategy, risk, priorities, readiness, and real organizational goals rather than fear, habit, or product excitement alone. Strong ROI analysis helps leaders understand what value the investment is expected to create through reduced exposure, stronger resilience, better control, or preserved trust, even when that value is not always easy to express in exact dollars. For someone new to CISM, the most important takeaway is that budgeting is one of the clearest places where security leadership proves its maturity. It shows whether the leader understands the business well enough to ask for the right things, at the right time, for the right reasons, in language decision-makers can actually use. That is what turns security from a technical cost center into a strategic function the organization can justify, support, and rely on over time.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.